Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you already know how it gets down. You know you've been with me for about 5 years now. We're over 800 episodes in. And if I got to make a record, get a recording done in my car, damn right, I'm going to get a recording done in my car because I don't necessarily do this show for me as much as I do it for you guys, to give you guys something, to give you guys a gem, to give you guys a moment, to give you guys just a little bit something to make it through your day. Today, again, as you have become accustomed to when you hit the play button on this show, whether it's just myself or a guest, I have an absolutely incredible human being on this call today, or not on the call, but on today's episode, that is going to absolutely light this microphone on fire because he's all about teamwork. He's all about leadership. He's all about creating opportunities for very inclusive spaces for people to thrive and for people to be great. You know, I've actually been a guest on his show as well, and there's just a ton of things that we'll be able to do. His name is Jackson Calame. Calame, correct?
That's right.
Jackson Calame. He's the founder of Vision Pros Live. And, you know, there's so many things about him. He's very, very deep in terms of a lot of the complexities that he comes with, but we're going to discuss all that in a second. Before I make the intro too long, Jackson, welcome to the show.
Dude, happy to be here. Aswan, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, so let's get things started, man, because as I am on my way to Orlando, actually, to an event called Creators Live. It's a Creators Live event. So I've been listening to you all morning on my way from West Palm Beach to Orlando, listening to a lot of your shows. And, you know, one can look at you and say, look, you run a great company, you've delegated very well, you're doing a lot of cool things, you've read a ton of books, incredibly knowledgeable about what you're about. But things weren't always very easy for you. You know, you spoke about, you know, being raised, one side of the family was great, the other side of the family was incredibly challenging and things like that. So to start things off, I think it might be best for you to just kind of go back to that time in your life, talk a little bit about your background, and we'll kind of go from there, man.
Dude, love it, love it. And things weren't easy. Things
Mm-hmm.
aren't easy. Things never will be easy because I don't plan on losing my growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is all about the trials, the adversity, the friction. All of you athletes know I need that in order to get stronger, right? So yes, going back to the beginning, my mom's a phenomenal mom, loving. We had everything we could have wanted in our little home of my mom and five older sisters, right? So my dad was out of the picture. Go ahead. Hit it.
Yeah. No, I mean, you said you put the number five, oh, that's six total, just so you guys
I
know.
had six total moms, man. God knew I was gonna be work.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and my five older sisters, their dad died in a plane crash when my
My
mom was
God.
28 years old.
Oh
Her
my
life
God.
was rocked overnight.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they never expected to have a little brother. So my dad
Well,
comes along, charismatic alcoholic.
hmm.
One comes before the other. And, you know, when I was four, my mom said that enough's enough. This isn't how she wanted her family and home to be
Right.
run. And the very next year, he ended up with my stepmom.
Mhm.
And that home was like the most toxic home I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of dramatic movies as one. I have never seen somebody with the toxicity that my dad displays to people, not to me. I was
Mm,
his favorite, but
mm,
he treated my step siblings awfully. So guess what? My step siblings weren't exactly a fan of me.
right.
My stepmom wasn't exactly a fan of me.
Mm,
And so I had one home that was absolutely amazing. Church, love, all the things somebody could want looking back. And then on the flip side, my dad's home, which was hate, people doing drugs early on,
mm,
alcohol, pornography, like the whole nine yards. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong in that home was going wrong. And
mm,
so I was given two very, very deep perspectives. And it helped me see like, all right, what do I want my life to turn out like? What were the results looking like for these people who are all older than me? I mean,
mhm.
by the time I was 12, I had 15 half and step brothers and sisters to learn from, and I had more than 87 cousins. 87 when I was younger on my dad's side of the family, and
Mhm.
all of them were up to different things in life. And I got to watch everybody grow up and say, what do I want my life to be like? And it made me make really hard choices too. Was I going to follow the easy path that everybody else was on, or was I
Mhm.
going to stick to my principles and figure out, what more can I have than what I was given? But again, that more, I was so blessed with the insight of my mom's side to see
Hmm.
that, okay, there are great things that can come, and there are certain patterns that can ensure that I end up with the great things in life. So
Hmm.
my hope is, if ever, anybody out there has somebody in their life who has patterns or who has success around you, start looking at that. Start taking curiosity and saying, you know what? It doesn't matter what's going on in my home. What's going on outside of my home that I can model and emulate, and can I shift gears to make the most out of my life?
Well, first of all, much respect for actually having the vulnerability and the courage to share these things because I know they're not easy places to go back in. So I got to give you kudos to that, and I appreciate your transparency in regards to that. But when you actually, I'm sitting here listening to this story, it's almost like I'm listening to someone that's been able to move on from these times and look at it at how positive it was, how positive these perspectives was, and that's something that truly, truly is a important lesson for listeners to carry on it as well. What would you say allowed you to get that perspective? I know you had showed me actually the poster behind you about teamwork. You're a ferocious reader, and you mentioned, I'm not sure if you are like a Spurs fan, like a
Oh,
diehard official,
huge,
but kind of
huge.
speak on some of the things that allowed you to get that perspective to where now you talk about it as if it's something that was a blessing. Like you wouldn't trade anything, everything you just mentioned. Hey, all of that made me who I am now.
Jeez, man, easy to dive into so much because I've been doing it for years,
Hmm.
right? It's not something that came overnight.
Right.
And so wherever you're at in your path, those of you listening in, make sure that, you give yourself some grace to start small. Right. Also make sure the person or the people that you're talking to will respect your paradigm. If
Hmm.
you're not surrounded by people who are going to respect your paradigm, you're going to get your ass kicked. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the podcast, but it's
One
going to be.
thousand allowed. They've heard worse. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly. So here I was, 6 years old. My dad would take me to his house, and then there's stuff going on. So he'd also take me to my uncle's, and he'd just leave me there for the weekend. And so I had three cousins who were six, I think 6, 8, and like 11.
Uh-huh.
And we would go next door to my grandpa's shop, my grandpa's grocery store, not grocery store, gas station, and we'd start gathering the cigarettes that were smoked, the lottery tickets that were discarded, the
Hmm.
beer cans that were half drank, and
Hmm.
we'd take those all back to this tank, this little pond thing, and they would drink and smoke. We were six, man. We were 6 years old, and I wouldn't. I refused to do it. I was there to help with the process, and I was there to enjoy my cousins. I wanted to play with them. I wanted to do normal kid things, and they would just relentlessly pick on me for not for being a city boy, for being too soft, for not having the hard feet to cross the sticker patches, for not cussing, and for not doing the things that they would do. And I would oftentimes walk home crying. I would walk away, and I would just spend the rest of my day like by myself. And this didn't happen all the time. We had some good times too, of course. But those moments of resilience, right? They gave me an opportunity to think through, what do I want? How do I want to be? How do I want to treat others? And my stepmom, man, my stepmom took everything out on me that my dad took out on her kids. And so as I went through that, and I learned from my mom too, like the reality that we should be like Jesus, that we should love. We read books about like Martin Luther King and Will Rogers, and I started to see, you know what? I allowed myself to believe that love would be the power to overcome it all. And I think some people, have a really hard time grasping that and don't realize how powerful love can be. And I'm going to fast forward a lot, but over the years, there were so many trials to practice trying to love my stepmom in spite of how she was treating me because of the toxicity she had to deal with my father, that I came back from a mission in Uruguay telling people that love will eventually conquer in this situation. I was 22 years old, or 20, no, I was 23 years old. I'd just been married, and I go to the funeral for my ex step grandfather at that point.
Hmm.
And I get there, they're already split. They finally split. After all of that, my parents, my dad and my stepmom split. I go to the funeral. She looks at me like, "What are you doing here?" And I go up to her, and I tell her my condolences, and she kind of asks me, "Well, what happened? Why are you here?" And I said, "Because you're my family, and I love you. I was never here for him. I was always here for us, all of us.
Yeah.
You will always be family to me. And she embraced me with a hug.
Yeah.
And my oldest stepbrother from that situation, same thing. Like we're all like this. She passed away this past year, due to a cancer bout. And again, the point, the love aspect, it did not come overnight. It was a series
Right.
of processes. We had our hate too. We had our struggles,
Right.
but going back to love and
Hmm.
just practicing it, yeah, eventually it led to the importance of putting it on a poster. But I didn't put it on a poster because I was supposed to. I put it on a
Hmm.
poster because I know the power of it.
Heartfelt. It's heartfelt. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you brought up love because that's ultimately the goal is to make sure that love is driving all your decisions. The hate, the resentment, the feeling like you're the victim and the toxicity, that is not a way to live. It's not a way to live when you're blessed enough to actually get to see another day, when you're blessed enough to get another 24 hours. So that's important, and actually reminds me actually too of when I actually saw an example of it myself, something similar when my grandmother on my mother's side passed away. She passed away from years of battling cancer, and the first person that they had that actually spoke at her funeral was her ex-husband in front of the current husband. And it was such a great embrace because we realized how loved this lady was, and that started to become the goal. And as you're speaking, as you're going through the books and the kind of the breakthroughs and the insights and the things that you're starting to develop as a young man, as you're starting to learn these things, what would you say school was like? You kind of already mentioned meeting your wife and going to Uruguay and stuff like that, but how would you say you were able to navigate the school system where you sort of alluded to it's gonna make it so like when we're men, we're talking love. We're like, bro, you're soft, like come on, you're reading books, you're talking. So, like I can see kind of being in that school setting to where you're talking like this. It's like, hold up, man, that's not what we do here, bro. How were you
Uh,
able to navigate that school system, that culture, into making obviously the strides you've made now?
Man, you bring up a great point. One, I didn't talk like that in school. For one, there's a different way to go about that. And
Yeah,
if I'm, it depends on where you're teaching. There's a dialect, right? Always
yeah,
in all settings. I speak Spanish fluently as well, right?
right,
So
right.
if I'm speaking to my Latinos that are from Uruguay, I
Hmm.
speak very differently than I speak to the Mexicans that I also work with, and I speak very
Hmm.
differently to Peruvians and the Colombians, and we have an interesting time translating the whole situation.
Okay.
But it's no different than Texans trying to relate to New Yorkers,
Okay.
or somebody who grew up in an African American family, that's first generation, from Africa
Right.
versus somebody who grew up for decades in Louisiana.
Hmm.
There's so many nuances there, and some people call it two-face. In fact, the Republicans called President Obama two-face because of the
Hmm.
way he showed up to speak in church,
Hmm.
but then the way that he shows up to speak when he's debating, and that's not
Right.
two-faced. That's being relevant. That's
Right.
understanding that you're like the core of your audience, right? And so, in a podcast, it's hard because you can't see who's there, all right, and who you're talking to. But being able to show up for people the right way is a learned trait,
Hmm.
and as a dad of 12, 10, 8, and 3-year-olds, man, you
Hmm.
might hear me say, I got to go potty and be like, oh man, I didn't mean to say that. Like there's a different word. It doesn't change my
Right.
personality or my identity. It's
Right.
because I use the languages of love, right? I use the ability to speak to who I'm talking to relate to
Yeah.
them at their level. And
Hmm.
and when I say level, it's not about equal or minus. It's about me showing up with respect for the people that I'm with. So going
Yeah.
back to like the high school side of things, um, you know, I think the way that I showed love at that time, and I mean, well, let me back off on that too, man. I was a fighter. I know how
Hmm.
to box. I mean, you did not want to cross one of my friends, and you did not want to come at me. It was
Did you
not.
so did you train like you train box like as a fighter or
My
was it just
dad, my dad was undefeated in Vietnam, in
oh,
boxing, and my
okay.
grandpa on my other side lost one
Oh, it's
fight
in the
before weight
it's in the
classes.
blood. It's in your blood.
That's a
Okay.
blood thing, dude. No,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'll throw
All right.
down.
All right.
It's not hard to do. I could take a punch. I like a Rocky too, man. Like you can hit it ain't gonna phase me.
You must have loved that.
So
I could see you seeing that series for the first time. You must have been enthralled with that entire movie franchise.
oh, I don't actually watch it until last year. So
That was the first time you watched it last
that
year?
was the first time I actually watched it.
Oh man, yeah, you did. You It was like
I
the
was like, I
same.
was like a little kid
Uh,
watching it, man. I was, I was like, this is great.
I've seen it 100 times. I still get like a little kid when I'm watching.
So yeah, I mean, so as to try to like kind of, I guess, paint some picture on it though.
Mhm.
I loved individual conversations with people. Like I loved getting to know people one on one, and that's kind of how I ended up being a pretty popular kid without realizing it because I would just go around meeting new people all the time. And as I
Mhm.
met with new people and talked to new people and try to find the person like who's sitting alone and like spend a little time with them or whatever, or bounce
Uh,
groups because I get really bored with small groups cliques because small
yeah.
groups talk about shit.
Yeah.
Right? Small groups gossip, or they talk about politics, or they talk about things that don't matter. One on one, I can ask you some real questions that you're not worried about anybody else like talking about. I just had this weird reality where I gravitated towards that. And in large groups, there's
Mhm.
usually a controlled facilitator, an alpha or a teacher or something that moves the conversation towards something valuable. So
Mhm.
I ended up learning about a lot of different people, and it turned out like I had friends and all. I ended up nominated for like homecoming
Mhm.
king or something, and I remember being shocked because I was like, I don't, I'm not a popular kid. I'm not the kid that's liked by anybody, whatever. Like,
Mhm.
but it's just showing up one on one for people and being there and like diving in deep, man. That was it. I didn't think that was love. In school, my grade always came with the E on the report card, and an E in Texas for
Mhm.
every single teacher meant excessive talking, and I rock a mic.
Uh, yeah, that's actually turned out to be a good thing. And I'm glad you actually mentioned clicks because I teach myself at a school and I actually did a full series on the issues with clicks. And that's been one of my biggest gripes with the people I deal with every single day. When you're building when you got to a point where you're building your organization, how did that whole thing start? What was the vision behind it? And when it comes to how you continue to grow it and continue to build it, how do you avoid these inevitable clicks, man? Because they are inevitable. You see people, especially in the working world, they see somebody that they're familiar with, and it's easy to just gravitate to that person. And then somebody else comes in that relates to them. There's just this natural way where we're conditioned to be around people that we relate to, and we start to basically say fuck everybody else, our idea is the best idea, I don't want to hear anybody else's perspective. So how do you address that issue, man?
Yeah, of course. So I've been fortunate to start a number of organizations, and I was a shitty leader. No, like I was bad.
Right,
And
so
it
you've been
took me
right.
a long time to figure out how to get on my own way with that. So it didn't start by being able to create an amazing organization. I can tell you right now, my organization, I get to wake up, dive into Slack, start talking to my team. It feels like my birthday every single day at this point. Like my team is absolutely amazing. I love them. I love hanging out with them. They love hanging out with me. But it took me years to figure that out. And you talked about books I've read and all that. I mean, I was blessed with an intelligence, but I had a 0.33 GPA my first semester in college, Aswan. That is hard to do. I only got that because my political when I take international politics teacher, I was at his class every time. I didn't turn in the midterm. I didn't turn in the final exam. No, the final paper. I didn't go to the final exam. He gave me a C because he saw my passion. He saw like I think he looked at all my grades and was like, "This kid screwed up bad," and he gave me a C. And I was so grateful for that. And he said, "Jackson, if you
That happened to me in a stats class too. So yeah, college, if you show up, and again, for anybody that's going to college, if you actually show up, then you do get the benefit of the doubt. So make sure you pick something that you actually like the curriculum or like the subject, and make sure you're showing up regularly.
absolutely," he tells me, "Jackson, if you want to educate a nation, educate a mom. If you want to change a nation, educate a mom." And I was like, that hit deep. I mean, he didn't know I grew up with six moms. Like that. This guy knew something. And so the reason why I share all that again, I had to go through the hard path. I had to learn to want to read these books. And learn to realize like I just had so much to learn that I've got to figure out from mentors, and mentors write great books. Mentors come in many forms. People you know, people you don't. If I only stuck with people that I knew, my life would have gone off of a cliff. Like that's not we're not limited. We have the ability to get outside that box. But it was Patrick Lencioni's book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, just a few years ago, that I was finally at a leadership stage where I was willing to like listen and learn and get out of my own way and start seeing how to progress as a team. Yeah, I could pull the rope as hard as I want to, right? And I can move mountains with that because of my own sheer will and strength. But when I learned to let go of the rope and allow others to pull that I wouldn't accidentally get in the way of, and realize that I can go out in the world and recruit people to help pull this rope too, and that my greater strength was finding more people to help pull the weight. Many hands make light work. It took me a long time to cultivate the type of leadership that actually attracts people to want to come work with you who would appreciate the environment that you can create. So if you have a vision and you can't articulate it to anybody, nobody's following you. You just look nuts. You look absolutely crazy. I went through 14, 15 years of that, right? Then you build a culture that people want to belong to based on principles, shared virtues, whether that's hot topic, where everything is like dark and dingy and it feels awkward, or whether that's a church, right, built on principles of Jesus Christ, right? There's shared principles that attract people to come and say, I want to belong to this. And if your principles are principles that attract leaders, leaders come. And I was looking at I had some really bad clients, man. I had some, and they're not bad people, but they were bad clients. They didn't know how to behave as leaders. And I was working locally in San Antonio, great city, but I started thinking about Greg Popovich. I started thinking about Bill Belichick, and I started thinking, man, these guys don't go to the local YMCA to recruit. You go and like I imagined, I went through the virtual process of really meditating on it, thinking if Greg Popovich went to the YMCA to recruit, he would have a ton of people be like, "Yo, I can ball, I'm ready. You know, you guys overlooked me. I should have that opportunity." And he would get so disappointed because the people who are in the local YMCA, they're not ready for the combine. They're not ready for the G League. They're not ready to go through all the process. They just talk and talk. It's a giant waste of time. So what did the NBA and the NFL do? They set up these combines where supply and demand is 100% in their favor. And they got lots of options and lots of assessments. They got people who are giving everything to be able to get into the league. We need to set that up as business owners, where people are coming and they want in so badly to the business that they're willing to do what it takes at a discipline level of a champion, not show up and be like, oh, I deserve this job because I'm a copywriter. I should get paid top dollar because I took so-and-so's course. And so therefore I know everything about copywriter. Yet that same copywriter doesn't know that you can't be a copywriter without an editor and without a publisher and without a researcher. They think they can do it all alone. And it's like, what the heck? Where do these people think they learned business? Like, it's not from a great institute. It's not from a championship level culture. So I learned to stop fighting that and say, you know what? I got compassion for people like that. But if I want to build a championship level culture, I have to be willing to bring people in, and I have to set boundaries up so that only people with championship level behaviors actually want to work with us. Just like Harvard, you can't get into Harvard without having a history and a resume of consistency, reliability, patience, persistence, right? And you don't have to have the love aspect in order to get into Harvard. But there's a filtration process that makes sure that people who have the same disciplines are all coming to respect the culture of that campus. We got to do the same thing in our lives.
So, real quick point of order are you not hearing any air conditioning is there any problem with the sound? All right, that's the reason I keep going on mute, because when the iPhone is too hot, I don't want it to cut you off. That's happened on this show, by the way, where the iPhone is too hot and I got to make sure. So again, learning that everything, actually just saying that makes me want to make a point as well. When you've done things like this in the past, you're prepared for, whatever nuances or whatever adjustments you have to make whenever you're recording. So that's number one. I didn't even plan on giving that as a gem, but more importantly, the analogy that you're using with Bill Belichick, with Greg Popovich, I mean, legendary coaches, not just showing up at a YMCA and saying, hey, hopefully the next time Brady or Tim Duncan is going to come across. No, there's an actual process and there's an actual mindset, there's an actual system that they have in place where they're attracting the Tom Brady's of the world, the Ginobili's of the world, the Parkers of the world, the Julian Edelmans of the world. And what I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to clearly communicate to other business owners, because that's primarily the folks that listen to the show, is how do you set up these filtration processes? How do you set up these vetting processes? What is the like a step one? If you have to give them a step-by-step process, how do they do it? Because this, what you're talking about, infiltrates a shitload of businesses. It ruins a ton of great organizations, great visionaries, great owners that I've seen work their ass off, and they just bring in the one wrong person, Jackson. That's it. Chop it up. Only because the system wasn't set up to where they're bringing in other hungry people. And, I'd love for you to kind of just share what that process would be like so they actually know specifically what's that first step they should be taking.
Absolutely. Ray Kroc, McDonald's, right? McDonald's
Yeah.
thief, some people would call him, right? He's not the original founder of that. The McDonald brothers had that. And I'm playing with the idea of thief. This man did not go into that business model with the mindset of I'm going to be the best burger flipper ever, and I want the step-by-step actions for how to create the best burger. Business owners, if that is what you were doing, if you were trying to learn how to be the best at HR, if you are trying to learn how to be the best at operations and marketing, if you're trying to learn how to do all this yourself, you are toast. You are not going to make the history books. You cannot do this alone. You cannot just learn those steps. You need to learn how to find the people who know how to do that and then have the actual balls to hire them. That is what it takes, right? So you need to be willing to bring the right people in. This book, Hiring on Purpose, it's Dan Martell's Bible of business, as he calls it. Max Hansen and Brian Moore wrote it. I think it's a phenomenal book that teaches a lot of those principles, but my word and caution to you as a business owner is do not try to attempt that on your own. They talk about the Bears absolutely blowing it by bringing in Jay Cutler, who is on paper an absolutely phenomenal quarterback. And go ahead. Hit it.
Pause you on this one. I moved to South Florida to work for the Miami Dolphins Foundation. All right. A lot of you regular listeners know that this might be the first time you're hearing that as a first time listener. But I was there the year where they go and they bring in Adam Gase, who had Jay Cutler in Chicago. He had Jay Cutler in Denver, and he ended up getting the job because he had coached Peyton Manning, and all of a sudden he was this offensive guru that the Miami Dolphins had hired as a head coach. This guy brings in Jay Cutler for, I believe it was like $10 billion for 6 months, something ridiculous, and we completely blow the season. All right. And again, if Jay Cutler, if you're listening, I'm not taking
we love you, bro. We love you, bro.
Made it to the NFL, baller. But at the end of the day, this dude was just not the leader. Again, had all the tools, had all the intangibles, was not the leader that an NFL organization needed. That's what is required at the quarterback position at that level. And I love the analogy because it teaches you as an owner of a business, you got to be the quarterback. You got to have the conviction. You got to have the balls. You got to have something more than just the specific talent. Can you lead people? Can you go out there? Do people die for you? Do people actually want to fight for you? Jay Cutler, just Google him yourself. He don't got that. He doesn't have it. Or he just doesn't have that.
Maybe he's learning it later, like I got that hope that in the other important areas of life he'll figure it out, right?
But during those playing days, he just didn't have that eye until we were talking about Rocky, that eye of the tiger look to him. So you brought him up. You set me on.
I told a recent client, that to just read the first 25 pages of this minimum, right? Yeah. To at least dedicate their time to spend the 25 pages because it's a paradigm shift that is so important, and it basically just shreds the resume and says, look at the virtues, of the individual. And if you haven't been looking at virtues, then again, bring somebody in. But so that's a big part of it is, right, having virtues, but then being able to set systems up to be able to test those virtues, creating a combine itself, right? When you start to attract the great leaders into the world, you know what happens? The prospects that are out there that might want to work with you, they start becoming attracted to that too.
Hmm.
right? So it's a marketing thing. Nobody's looking. Everybody's looking at how can I get my product out there? How can I get my service out there? Externally, what can I do? No, internally. What
Hmm.
can we do to help people see that they want to belong in
Hmm.
this place? So those are again that's don't attempt it alone, but you then have to look at, well, how do I find the mechanic? Right? If you're telling me, Jackson, don't create the shot from one, well, you'd say Ray Kroc did learn everything about a burger, right?
Hmm.
He went to the best of the best. He found the people who were doing it right, and then he learned what they were doing, and he worked with them, and he tried really hard to negotiate with them on expanding. And then as he kept moving, he eventually found this real estate person who taught him that you're screwing up if you're in the business of burgers. You're supposed to be in the business of real estate. And he listened to that. There was a strange self-assuredness, yet
Yeah.
humility about the way the man was willing to work with other leaders. And what is talked about in Tribal Leadership, a book that's far too hard it was far too hard for me to consume. It took me a year. I read 50 pages and I had to marinate on that for a year before I went back and finished the book. But they
Huh.
talk about how people who speak with I, I am great. I can do this. I am going to be awesome at this. Their subconscious is saying, I am great and you are not. And what that means is they aren't able or willing to work with people who are potentially better than them because they don't want that to be challenged. And they're stuck in a self-sabotaging reality. The same is true of people who think about life in terms of we are great, and they are not. There's so many marketing campaigns putting down competition, saying we're better. Those are the better companies in the world typically, but we are great subconsciously says they are not. And it's a fight, it's a dog fight that is never going to put you on top, 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 top. There's another level, and that next level is life is great. I got no
That's
reason to fight with you.
politics. I mean, that's what we see in every day. The political ads. It's very rarely is it about, okay, this is the person I'm good because of the policies. It's always putting somebody else down, and I would do my best not to bring up politics here.
Here's why, though.
Not doing
It's important to understand the why for everybody out there,
Yeah,
because everybody that's in the I market are the suckers who buy the most. That
yeah,
is the most lucrative market in the
yeah,
world. And so the
exactly.
personal development section, most of the people who are delivering results in that environment are taking advantage of a small of a market that thinks small and is willing to let others control them. We have
Hmm.
to say no to that. We have to say, you know what? I don't want to stay stuck in the I mentality. I want to move on from that and recognize there are levels to this development stuff that will take
Hmm.
me to new heights, but I've got to stop fighting the world. I got to find out who's willing to be on my team
Yeah.
and say, how can I inspire them to stick with me?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up McDonald's too, because that's actually a point that a lot of people don't know about the real estate aspect and the decorations. And if you go to a different McDonald's, the orders are going to be the same, the franchising and all that going to be the same, the menu's going to be the same, but you can go to a different one in different states. It's not going to look the same. The one in Vegas is not going to look like the one in Oklahoma, some
Correct.
country. It's not going
Paris.
to.
Yep.
I'm seeing the one in Vegas for the first time. I was like, damn, but they're in the business of real estate decoration and stuff like that. But again, the food
Right.
was the same. I can tell you that. So saying that makes me the thing is, and I don't want to brush over the point that you made earlier about being bilingual, because I remember actually getting on a call with you and you were actually he's not bullshitting you guys. He's fluent. He's very very well when it comes to Espanol. But it's actually part of the growth of your organization. There's things that you plan on doing. I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak on that a little bit. That is going to serve a multiple, not just serve the states, but there's going to be ways of serving people that are not just English speaking people. You're coaching them to have the vision that you have and all that. So I'll give you the floor to speak on that a little bit.
Oh, huge, man. I love that. Oh, entrepreneurs out there, the more you give, the more you get. I am a very big believer in that principle. It is not even just a matter of like, oh, I love people. And like once you learn that the more you give, the more you get, it becomes almost selfish to give at that point. So it's not this altruistic thing. But I was blessed with this knowledge that if I help these people, right, great things will come out of it. And so I just don't want people to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's doing all this stuff just because of his heart. No, it isn't that. That's a benefit and a byproduct. But there's so many opportunities when we just dive in to our absolute purpose. And that's what it was. So I understood while I was living in Uruguay, I came to this very strong realization that I needed to help as many towns as possible, like the one I was living in that was suffering with poverty that I just had not really experienced and couldn't quite comprehend. And so I come back to the States, get ready to get into business, and long story long, it took me 14 years, my friends, to get to where my group of Latinos was 600 strong. I mean, I had a ghost town on Facebook of 600 people. You know how Facebook
Wow.
groups are. They're hard
Yeah.
to manage, man. They're hard to keep up with. Life's
Right.
battles come. Your limiting beliefs conquer you. And so it was almost like
And
600.
you never know who's actually on it and going to be using it. There's some people that could be in groups and not active with it and stuff like that. So just building one up is a challenge.
It's an incredible challenge. And so learning, like you don't give up, right? First attempt in learning, failure, right? You keep
Yeah.
going. And fast forward to just 2 weeks ago. Well, we started to grow the last couple of months at about 10 to 12 people per week because of
Hmm.
my team. I got this amazing team in place to help with this process. And then to blow everybody's mind, Louisa, who is new, who had been with us for only 6 weeks, did
Hmm.
her very first podcast interview. This is somebody who's never worked in the online space.
Yeah.
He hosted Kike Inglés from a
Uh-huh.
YouTube channel. He's got 900,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And her first interview was with him. I've never interviewed anybody that big before. I've been doing this a long
Awesome.
time. It
Right.
is, and I didn't even meet the guy. I've sent him an
Yeah.
email now and said like, I'm so happy that you supported us, and we became email friends, right? Like brother from another mother type thing. But here's what happened. Because of the diligence and the process, and because of God's grace and all the things that led to us finally getting to this point,
Uh-huh.
he met with Diana, who's our director of what's called Opportunities for Latinos. He
Uh-huh.
learned that she was brought into this program to learn about how to be a digital marketer, and actually is paid to help other Latinos learn for free how
Yeah.
to become digital marketers and what we
Right.
call digital ambassadors. And
Mhm.
she did the interview. Cynthia did the follow-up interview. We have the whole system set up by Maria Victoria, by Andres. They got all these stories of these people who they had no job. They had no resume like that had qualified them for coming to our company. Now they've got these opportunities. They've learned
Mhm.
things like crazy about they're better virtual assistants than most virtual assistants in the world who've had 5, 10 years because of the amount of effort we put into training them and helping them grow. And so
Mhm.
he's hearing that all organically from them. And
Mhm.
he's all sorts of speculations out of those 900,000 subscribers. Most of those people are learning English because they want a job. They want a better career opportunity. And so he's getting hit up. Imagine how many messages he gets on a weekly basis from
Mhm.
subscribers saying, hey, can you hire me? Hey,
Mhm.
do you know where I can get a job by chance, Kike? And
Right.
he doesn't know where to turn for that. He's not in the business of getting people jobs. He just wants to teach English.
Exactly.
And
Right.
now
Right.
he finds this program that's all led by Latinos, some of them who own percentages in my company. And
Mhm.
he's going, what the heck is going on? And he's now excited. So now he's just did the second interview this week with us, and he's
Right.
excited to be promoting this. I don't know if that's going to lead to 800,000 people join our group, or eight
Mhm.
people, or 800 people. I care, but it's not my focus. My
Right.
focus is, can we show up and do our best in this
Mhm.
reality? So now we've got Ange in the Philippines, who, out of all the Filipinos I've worked with, she's the first one to gravitate towards saying, you know what? I'm going to build opportunities for Filipinos. And we've helped her launch her podcast and her brand called Timecraft Virtual. And I want my people to rise up and to
Mhm.
pursue their dreams and their purposes. And now Harry, who's an immigrant from India, lives in me.
He interviewed me on the when we did
Oh,
the.
you met Harry? He just launched Opportunities for India.
Yeah.
That's one.
Oh yeah. I remember
Oh man, like
that.
there's
Shout out
so
to
many
Harry, man.
opportunities.
Congratulations, bro. We had a
Thank you.
good talk.
Yes, it is. It is so awesome to finally be in a position to where these types of leaders are coming in a little bit more, and
Mhm.
we make sure that we find out who people are, what their
Mhm.
visions are, what their passions are and their goals. If we need some refinement along that way to help them, like a lot of people will come into life, and they'll be like, "Well, what's your passion?" And if your passion's pizza and video games, I get that. I was there. I remember what those days were like. And when I can help them start to think through things in a different capacity, and we start to think through deeper questions like, what do you want to be remembered for?
Hmm.
It's usually not pizza and video games.
Exactly.
Right, so there's a process. We have a very neat process to help people start to see the world in a completely different way, but we have to be careful that the people that we bring in are able
Mhm.
to be a part of this culture without fear, because fear doesn't help with the love aspect. It just gets people on edge. We got to make sure that the people are ready to do their part and contribute in
Mhm.
addition to being nurtured and cultivating this awesome type of success. So yeah, opportunities, man, we're looking to expand that as much as we can to as many parts. We got 8 billion people that have been
Mhm.
left behind in this world.
Yeah.
Like we got a lot of work to do. So I show up ready to do that each day, and so does my team.
Well, there you have it, listeners. I mean, we kind of mentioned some politics here, but if you're talking about job creations, all the stuff that the politicians are promising you, it's right here that I've said it so many times with business owners. The politicians love business owners because it's us that's actually going out and creating the jobs. It's us that's actually doing the work that's from the heart, that's heartfelt work. And we didn't mention this on today's episode yet, but I've heard you mention how money is not necessarily the factor that's going to bring people in. Sometimes it can be equity. Sometimes it can be they just want an opportunity. Sometimes it can be situations where you as an owner, just because you don't have the money to hire people, quote unquote, is no longer the excuse. You can offer something if you're doing your work from your heart. If you
You
actually
know
are
how
doing,
much I've worked for free as one? I
yeah.
have done an amazing amount of work for free throughout my career. And as a 0.33 GPA trying to get into the business world, the only thing I could do was say, let me prove it to you. Let me work hard. I do not regret a single one of those contracts. I am
Mhm.
not a victim. I will never
Yeah.
have a victim mentality about that reality and all the things I had to learn along the way to do that. I worked my tail off. I'm still doing pro bono work all the time in different capacities because I can, because I love the process of growth. But I want to hit the audience with one really powerful question.
Mhm.
If you had the ability to hire somebody in the US for $3,000 per month,
Mhm.
or one person, like change their life for the better, or you can hire 10 people in Colombia for $300 a month, or you can hire 30 people in Belize for $30 a month. All of them would do the exact same role. All of them would be full time. Am I a racist asshole for hiring the 100 people in, but it would have been, yeah, 30 people in Belize?
Mhm.
Or the 10 people in Colombia, or for hiring the one American on a wage that is respectable? There's something to think about as business owners in relation to economies of scale. I don't have the answer for it, but I do want people to think through and debate that
Mhm.
conversation of what's going on here. I'm not saying we export all jobs, but I am saying when you're at a ground level as a business and you
Mhm.
don't have the finances to hire people at 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 plus benefits, 401ks and all that stuff. If you
Mhm.
don't have it, you can't hire. If you don't
Right.
have it, you can't hire. You cannot possibly put somebody in that position. And so we tend to allow the noise of the majority dictate and control what we see as our visions and what we want to do. I'm telling you, though, if you if you allow yourself to think through, how do I provide for people in different parts of the world? How do I make space? How do I train them up? The goal is never to leave people in those positions. It's to bring in the workforce, the people that can lift, and put them on a path towards their next earned paycheck. You know how many people I meet as one that say, "Man, my virtual assistant just got to where they were just asking for too much money."
Mhm.
What are they doing asking for money? Why have you not built a path for them to earn more? Right?
Mhm.
Why are you participating in what I call virtual abuse, VA
Mhm.
relationships? Right? Why are
Mhm.
you not putting people on a path to where you're thinking about their good? Too many business owners are going out there and say, Aswan, how much does it cost to work with you? I might as
Mhm.
well slap you in the face and say, what's the least amount I can pay you?
Mhm.
We have awful mentalities as
That's
business owners. We need to get out of the habit of suppressing people, get into the habit of building great paths, and reassure people, hey, look, if you perform well over this 30-day period, here's what's ahead. right? If we perform well together and the team likes how things are going and you're playing nice and we're building on great principles, and in 4 months, here's what's looking. What do you want a year from now? What do you want 2 years from now? Most business owners out there, and I've been through it because I've been put through it over and over myself. I see my
Right.
team members put through it. I hear the stories of team members coming in. They're crying in their interviews because they're saying, Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
most of the people in India, Pakistan, and the Philippines that I've interviewed cry in our interview.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, Jackson's the first time an American has ever treated me with this type of respect.
Wow.
And I say, on behalf of my country, I am so sorry that that's the
Wow.
case.
Hmm. That's powerful, man. I'm thinking as you're talking about the guy I have do all my thumbnails from Bangladesh. Shout out to Rafi, the SEO guy.
Rafi.
The thing is about him is I hired him initially to do one thing, and then he ended up being somebody that I pay every 2 weeks because he took the initiative. It was so much more, it meant so much more to him. I wasn't even asking him to do clips, but I'm getting all these clips sent to me. He's doing extra thumbnails, he's doing SEO descriptions, and now he's somebody that's getting paid every 2 weeks coming directly out of my pocket because of one job I asked him to do a whole year. God, jeez, I can't believe it now. It's only almost been a year ago now. But understand what he's saying is very powerful because of the fact that the people who are willing to do it, it means so much more to them. They appreciate what your work so much more versus the person who goes to some fancy college. They walk around as if they're supposed to get some job that's going to pay them 30K a year or whatever, get some 401K and all that. Now there's this entitlement mentality that just eats away at your profits over and over again. You may not think if it's a big, 30K may not be a whole lot to you now, but the 30K with the attitude, with the I'm only doing work until 5 p.m. and if it's not in my job description, all that bullshit that a lot of people throw at you, eventually it eats away at your profits and you become ruined. I've seen it happen. Jackson's seen it happen. The majority
So,
of you business owners that you've been in business for longer than, let's say, 3 months, you've seen it happen. That mentality, weed it out. Weed it out. This is why sports is such a key factor in terms of development. This is why, again, when you mentioned being a Spurs fans, I remember back in the days when they were the dynasty. They were what the Golden State Warriors
oh,
are
you
now.
got Wemby, my friend. We are back.
They got Wemby. It's David Robinson days, Tim Duncan days, the Parker, Ginobili, Pop. He mentioned there was a sense with the Spurs, and I'm a Heat fan, so y'all kicked our ass. Y'all kicked our ass the last time the Big Three was together, and there was a sense that D Wade came out and said after when we beat you guys the first time, because they just kick your butt, man. They don't talk no shit, no flashy dunks, none of that. They just come out and kick your butt straight up. So all that, man, Jackson, I do want to be respectful of your time. Can you just tell people what's next, what they can expect coming down the pipeline, if they want to get in touch with you or reach out? Where do you normally send folks?
Man, I want to give one more gift to all of you guys, and that's it. How did I learn this
Mm-hmm.
aspect of hiring? Because I was awful at it in the beginning too. I was a virtual abuser. I hired that guy for $3.33 an hour for 1 hour per week, and I was terrified to do it. Right, and then I hired more people, and it took me a while to realize that the quality of work wasn't coming out, even though there were those diligent individuals. It wasn't until I shifted and started to ask these virtual assistants who were willing to take humble beginning money, what's your birthday? What's your favorite thing to do? Is this what you want to do for your whole life, or is this something you're doing for here and now to get somewhere else? When I started to care about the people and stop treating them like a transaction at Payless Shoes, I began to shift the results that I was able to create with these wonderful human beings who are often overlooked and treated like a transaction. So if you want to get in touch with us, visionproslive.com. If you got a vision that you want to share, come and share it boldly with me on my stage. You don't have to be Jay Cutler, right, who's rebuilding his legacy and turning around and making things amazing outside of the sport, and wants to correct the story and say, well, here's what actually happened. I love the person, right? It's about the process. I have processes. I got broken in life too, Jay. Don't worry about it. It happens. We can grow from it. Or if you're the average Joe and you feel like you're nobody, but you got this burning desire to help people, please come and share that vision with me humbly, vulnerably. I know what that's like. I was never meant to rock this mic, my friends. I wasn't built for that. But we step into we can step into the call to do more, and if that's you, then we look forward to getting to meet you.
Right. And the website is Visions Pro.
visionproslive.com, visionproslive.com, or firstclassbusiness.io. On the business side, you're welcome to see either or. I believe in freedom, but I highly recommend coming the route of Vision Pros and seeing what's going on there first.
Absolutely. It is a great setup. I myself have been a part of it, so I can speak firsthand knowledge about it. Just an incredible setup and incredible people underneath. I don't want to actually, the word underneath isn't even fair. The people that are equal to him, and the way they speak about Jackson is as if he is a friend. I mean, after Harry and I, it's just a story, you probably don't know this yet, but after Harry and I wrapped our interview, he immediately said, Aswan, I'm putting you on Jackson's calendar because I love the show. I love what you're saying, and you two just need to connect and figure something out. So I'm speaking firsthand knowledge from this, and it's important that you guys do that. Those websites will be included in the show notes as well. So Jackson, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination just a little bit. Go back to being the teenage boy. You have six mothers, as you said. They're older sisters technically, but I grew up with an older sister, so I know exactly what you mean when you say a mother type older sister. Pretend like you're kind of going through what you're going through in your childhood. Pretend that that version of Jackson has come into the room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Learn to love, not to just receive it. Learn to become it. You can become love. Learn that it's an action to take that helps others, and it may not feel like love to you when you're giving it, because it's not about you. It's about helping others. And learn to love yourself, because you're not going to be able to love people at full capacity until you can learn to love and appreciate yourself, forgive yourself, allow yourself to break free of any limitations. We have a Savior. You know that. His name is Jesus Christ, and he wiped all that out. And the longer you take to forgive yourself, the more you rob him of being able to heal you. So get over it. Let it go, and allow yourself to move into being your best self today, because I didn't start doing that until I was in my 30s. But if we could do that earlier, just imagine what we can accomplish together.
Mike officially drops, man. Listen, again, appreciate your vulnerability. Looking forward to staying in touch with you and keeping up with your journey. And as you listeners, as promised, this is what we do here. We just give you some, whether it's myself or a guest, we're here to help you and serve you and help you get through whatever moments you need to be getting through. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.